what we found in the ACE study involving 17,500 middle-class adults was that life experiences in childhood that are lost in time and then further protected by shame and by secrecy and by social taboos against inquiry into certain realms of human experience, that those life experiences play out powerfully and proportionately a half-century later in terms of emotional state, in terms of biomedical disease, in terms of life expectancy. In 1985, I first became interested in developmental life experiences in early childhood, really by accident. In the major obesity program we were running, a young woman came into the program. She was 28 years old and weighed 408 pounds, asked us if we could help her with her problem, and in 51 weeks took her from 408 to 132. And thought, well, my God, we've got this problem licked. This is going to be a world-famous department here. She maintained her weight at 132 for several weeks, and then in one 3-week period regained 37 pounds in 3 weeks, which I had not previously conceived as being physiologically possible. That was triggered by being sexually propositioned at work by a much older man, as she described him. And in short order, she was back over 400 pounds faster than she had lost the weight. I remember asking her why the extreme response. After initially claiming not to have any understanding of why the extreme response, ultimately she told me of a lengthy incest history with her grandfather from age 10 to age 21. Ultimately, it turned out that 55% of the people in our obesity program acknowledged a history of childhood sexual abuse. I mean, that obviously is not the only issue going on, but it was where we began. And as we went down that trail, then we discovered other forms of abuse, also growing up in massively dysfunctional households, etc. And the ACE study was really designed to see whether these things existed at all in a general population, and if so, how did they play out over time. We studied 10 categories of adverse life experience that were chosen because of their prevalence in the weight program: childhood sexual abuse, heavy-duty childhood physical abuse, I'm not talking spanking, major emotional abuse, recurrent humiliation, 2 categories of neglect, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was chronically depressed, suicidal, mentally ill, or in the state hospital, growing up in a home without both biological parents, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was alcoholic or a drug user, growing up in a home where mother was beaten, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was imprisoned during your childhood or adolescence. Those were the 10 categories. In a middle-class population, 1 in 11 people has experienced 6 or more of those adverse life experiences in childhood.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the JW Free Podcast. My name is James. I am your host, and you just heard the voice of Dr. Vincent Lafiti. This man has spent 50 years in the space of childhood trauma and internal medicine and how those two correlate. And the reason I play this audio is because I want everyone listening to know, as I do always, I want you to know it is now time for the governing body to pay for their wages of generational encumbrances. Because that is what that audio was. All of that abuse that those people experienced, all of it, that is an encumbrance. That word is usually used in the world of real estate, generally speaking. And all it means is a burden. So, yeah, I'm on my real estate kick, so stay with me, you guys. But what it means is if you have a property, you have a home, and you don't pay your taxes on your home, if you have someone do some work on your home and you don't pay the contractor, they will place a lien on your property. They will place a burden on your property, an encumbrance. Do you follow me? Okay, until that is cleared up, that will stay with it. And that is what the governing body has done for generations. They have created encumbrances on the minds and the bodies of millions, probably hundreds of millions of unsuspecting people. And we have finally reached a point where the dominoes are starting to fall. They've been in place for quite some time, but now they're starting to fall. And so I want to focus today's episode on the recent events over in Brussels, Belgium. If you haven't heard, I'm sure many of you have, but over in Belgium, the Jehovah's Witnesses were fined 12,000 euros for incitement to hatred against ex-members. And let me say incitement to hatred and violence against ex-members. Now, there's also another article that is where the number is 96,000 euro. So that's a pretty huge difference. But in either case, this is something that we've been waiting for to happen. And an interesting side note, we're actually going to jump around all over on this, but an interesting side note is one of the articles that I saw was from the Mozambique News talking about this event. And the reason why this is important is because Mozambique, Africa, all of these countries that we call third world or just don't have the resources or the economy to follow or at least learn about this type of organization, those countries is where the governing body and the Jehovah's Witnesses were targeting for more growth because they can no longer do it in the developed countries in the USA and Britain and all these countries where we have the access and we have the resources and we're lucky enough to have those things. They can no longer do it there. So their insidious plan was to go on overseas, cross the pond, and find those who are less fortunate so that they can encumber their minds. Are you following me? Now, let's go ahead and get into this article and see if we can chop it up pretty good. I'm glad to be reading this to you guys today. And so anyway, let me just start with this. The Jehovah's Witnesses in Belgium must pay a 12,000 euro fine for the systematic and disturbing, the word disturbing is in quotes, exclusion of ex-members who have left the organization, the Gent Correctional Court ruled on Tuesday. Now, I know that number may seem insignificant, but it really isn't. If you've been following me over the last few months, I told you, or I've been harping on, all it's going to take is just one. All right? When it came to the CSA cases, we got one going, we got a few going, and now they're starting to snowball. The Jehovah's Witnesses, especially their governing body, we have these morons on tape almost weekly, inciting violence, wishing we were dead, all this kinds of crazy stuff. We have them out of their own mouths. And so this is important because it's setting a precedent now for all of the other countries. And just in case you don't believe me, I'm going to skip further down in the article, and it says, quote, "This is just the start," former Jehovah's Witness member Patrick Heck told Heck. You know what? I'm not even going to try and pronounce that newspaper, so I'll put the link in the in the description below, and you can check it out for yourself. But he says, "We're going to the European Court. This has to stop everywhere," end quote. And I think we're all in agreement with that, at least former witnesses anyway. But my favorite part of this entire article, is the following. Jehovah's Witnesses state that ex-members should be shunned like the plague, said their lawyer, who assists the ex-witnesses who started the case. He used to sit on the Jehovah's Witness Judicial Committee and helped decide on exclusions until he realized it was going too far. Now, the wages of generational encumbrances are starting to be paid, and it doesn't get any better than a lawyer who is now working against him used to sit on their judicial committee. This is what we have been waiting for, these type of things to start happening, and it's felt like an eternity, even for the little year that I've been doing it. I can't imagine, for people who've been at this for 5, 10, 15 years, to be able to see this stuff starting to happen, how they feel. But I'm certain that it feels amazing because I feel great today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to another article. And this one's actually a-jw.org. Okay, so it's a play on their Jehovah's Witness website. And there's something specific that I want to read out of here that I think is another area where we catch them in their lives. Because when you ask Jehovah's Witnesses about their shunning policy and disfellowshipping and all that nonsense, they will tell you that they don't have to. We don't ask them to not talk to their family members or treat them like they're dead or totally disconnect from them. And here, the gentleman who's the lawyer was actually a member for 35 years. 35 years. A member for 35 years. Okay? Quote, Hack used to sit on the judicial committees of Jehovah's Witnesses and co-decide on expulsions until he judged it was going too far. We have never challenged the right to disqualify Jehovah's Witnesses. Organizations all have the right to remove members, but the way the expelled members are treated is wrong. If someone gives the order not to have any more contact after the expulsion, not to let them know there is a death in the family, that is wrong. Former members are considered totally dead. End quote. And there you have it. A member, probably an elder, who sat on their judicial committee for 35 years, now in court working as a lawyer against them, telling you what we've been saying all along, that they completely shun and act as if they're whoever they are dead. They are given those orders to do that. And the pain that comes with that is just, it's not right. It's just like he said, it's not right. It is wrong. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because it's another lie. Last week's episode was lies on top of lies within lies. This is what we're exposing. This is how that, the governing body dishing out that generational encumbrance. This is how they're starting to pay. They're starting to pay through exposure first. They're paid through exposure. They're paying back through us. And now they're on television. And now they're on everybody's magazine. And now they're on everybody's lips who didn't even know anything about the Jehovah's Witnesses. And now they're in court. And now they're coming after their charity status. Now they're making them sign up for the redress scheme. We already have the beginning of the sex abuse cases going. We have them admitting in court they're not who they say they are. They're changing their doctrines. They're changing their structure. They're hiding their money. They're suing people on social media for telling the truth. It is time to pay up. But in, usual Jehovah's Witness fashion, later on in the article, it says this, and this is the governing body speaking, the Jehovah's Witnesses. According to the association, there was no incitement to discrimination or hatred. Now, this is yet another lie. And here's how we're going to show you this is another lie. Take a listen.
The subject we're going to have this morning, a discussion about, while sobering, I hope you find it encouraging. I thought we'd discuss the final end of God's enemies. So it can be very encouraging, albeit sobering. And to help us with it, there's a beautiful expression here in the 37th Psalm. So find that 37th Psalm, and how encouraging to meditate on this beautiful verse, verse 20. But the wicked will perish, the enemies of Jehovah will vanish like glorious pastures, they will vanish like smoke. So, since they're Jehovah's enemies and Jehovah's our best friend, that means they're our